This is Whitney Gable. Whitney is a 2010 graduate?
2010, yeah.
2010 graduate of Webster University in the film program, but took a lot of, so we used to have a film program and a video program, and you had to pick one. But Whitney was a unique student at the time in that she became involved in some of the video program area, and that was what I was involved in. So Whitney and I got to know each other well because she took over the then flailing TV station that didn't have anyone to kind of run it. And she took it over and built it back up and made it viable for pretty much the rest of its life before it was just sort of a thing that didn't have enough viewership to continue. But Whitney did some things that impressed me during her time here, which was to learn about everything and then eventually find her way into the industry, I think, in a very interesting place. And so I thought we'd start out just by talking about what it is that brought you to film school originally.
Definitely. Well, first of all, Whitney Gable, once film's producer. I never knew I was going to be a producer. I was actually super interested in editing at the time. When I was in high school, they would have movies that would have the behind the scenes, like the making of content, and I thought that was always really fascinating that there were people who could get paid to do those types of things. I was like, there's just so many different jobs, so many different things you can do. Webster is pretty close to where I grew up, close to home. I grew up in Wentzville, Missouri. And I was also really big into drawing when I was a kid. So just looking for anything that was design related, film related, anything I could get my hands on and be creative. I started here, like Aaron mentioned, I started in 2006 as a film production major and took all the entry-level courses and tried to get a handle on what was most interesting to me. And then, as Aaron mentioned, the TV station was around, but it was definitely something I wanted to get my hands on just so I could learn a little bit more, get my hands in production outside of school hours. I did minor in video production, which is how I was able to meet up with Aaron a bunch, take editing courses. I think one of the biggest and most influential things for me about Webster was just getting to work on a lot of different projects with my classmates. Work on things outside of class, just getting to spend as many hours as possible with my hands on a camera, my hands at an editing keyboard, and just become exposed to a lot of different things. At the time, internships weren't really required. However, I was always looking for anything I could do to just further my involvement. I did intern with Creative Producers Group, which I think they're like Vidzu Media or CPG now. I did that for a few days a week when I was a senior. I interned at the St. Louis Science Center in their video department for 6 months or so. And then I actually did work at Once Films, where I work now, 2 days a week as sort of a just unpaid experience, something to do. That company was just starting out. So between working a few jobs, working at GTV, working on student films, and then doing these different things outside of class, it really gave me a well-rounded perspective of the types of production work that there could be. When I was in a production major, or the film production major, it was very much about working on Hollywood films, and that was it. And then working with Aaron showed me that there was work that you could do outside of that, that you could, you work for television, you could work for clients, you could work for companies, you could work for yourself, be a freelancer. And I think that was so influential because even though I did pursue that narrative production major, it planted the seed to where I am now. I can talk about LA next.
Yeah, that's what we forgot you did the Science Center.
Yeah.
That's one other thing I want to talk about because you worked with Dave over there.
I did, yeah.
And Dave he was in the first class I ever taught here.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's really cool.
First post-production class. And that's another thing that I think is important. Real quick, talk about connections.
Yes.
So you can't go to a production facility within 100 miles from here and not meet somebody who knows somebody from Webster University. Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe you could talk about, did you make any connections during that time that have still been useful to you?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. So, definitely your classmates, they're folks you're going to be connected with for life. Like Aaron said, when you go to any city, it's very often that you'll run into someone from Webster. When I was a senior, I did do some reaching out with the alumni network because I knew I wanted to pursue going to LA and trying that path and just seeing where I would end up. So the dean here at the time was able to connect me with some alumni that lived out in LA. I also did some just reaching out on LinkedIn, like people I didn't even know, and just said, hey, I'm planning on visiting in a couple of months. Would you mind grabbing coffee with me? Would you mind looking over my resume? I have no idea what studios out there are looking for. And you guys, like, I reached out to maybe 20 people, and like 17, 18 of them got back to me and were willing to chat. And that was huge, because I did go out there and met up with all of these different people, and some of them were just as simple as, this neighborhood's great, don't live in this neighborhood, or, tweak your resume like this. And then some of them were like, hey, I've got a shoot next week. Would you want to come and be a PA and work on it for a week? So it was really a variety of things. But yeah, these networks are amazing, and taking advantage of that while you're here, and even when you're not here, is incredible. I mean, I have, there's a couple employees at once that are Webster grads, and didn't even know that till after they were hired. But it really does reach quite a ways.
And so that sounds like a good segue into, you went to California, you grabbed for that brass ring, so tell them a little bit about that.
I did. So like I said, I worked at a few places here in St. Louis. I did work at once. I did work at the Science Center and at CPG, and they were great, but I always had that bug in the back of my mind of, like, if I don't try this now, if I don't go out to LA now, I'll always have that what if in my mind. And at that time, I really just wanted to work on feature films. I wanted to work for a big studio. I wanted to work on the Marvel movies, anything like that. So I went out there with, a little bit of money stashed away. I lived with my aunt and uncle on their couch for a few months, and took any job that I could get just to get experience. Some were paid and some were not. And then one day there was a job posting for a production assistant job at a major studio, and all you needed was a California driver's license. And so this will date me a little bit, but I was one of the first 50 in the fax machine to come out of the resume pile. I got an interview and got the job with 2.5 Men at Warner Brothers as a production assistant. I was there for about 3 years, and it was after Charlie. Like everybody always asks, did you know Charlie Sheen? But it was after that. And that was an incredible experience. It's not what I went out to LA to do. It wasn't a film. But I did get to see how the machine worked, if that makes sense. Our crews were about 250 to 300 people in a given week. We made a new episode every week in front of a live audience, which was incredible to see. I worked in the production office mainly, so I did a lot of gopher errands, a lot of coffee, a lot of scripts, a lot of driving people around on golf carts, and it was great. But I think the biggest thing I learned from that was just what all of those different types of jobs could be, what all those different roles would be. And I really fell in love with the production office. I fell in love with watching the producers do their thing and take an episode from start to finish. And yeah, it was really incredible.
Can you talk a little bit about what the culture shock is like to go so the university experience for a lot of people, by the time you folks are seniors, you're going to have a good sense of your community, you're going to have a good sense of your craft, you're going to kind of know what it is that you're making. I mean, you're going to make a senior overview maybe, and you'll be very serious about it. And then you go out to California, and it's very, very, very different, I would imagine, culturally.
It is. I think, here you tend to get comfortable a little bit. Like by the time you're a senior here, you're like, yeah, I know this place, and like this is my senior overview, and you do well, you succeed, and then you go somewhere brand new like that, and where it's such a big pond that it's extremely intimidating, and it's highly, highly competitive. And I do think that that's where that alumni support network comes into play, because you're really not alone. There are tons of people who have had the exact same experience that have been out there before you that can lend insight and wisdom. But I think really, and I believe this to this day, because this is actually one of our mottos at Once Films, but it's to be curious and not let any of that distract you or intimidate you when you go somewhere new. I think it's just, well, how do they do that? And like, how can I get there? And like, oh, well, what are they doing? Like, how do I get myself seen, or how do I get myself in front of that place? It's just asking a lot of questions and being, if you're passionate about it, that should come naturally. But yeah, to this day, I still do the exact same thing where I work now. It's just being curious.
And so 2.5 Men is a big deal, and you're out there and you're making strides, and obviously you're doing a good job because you get to work there for 3 years. And then somehow you're standing in front of a group of people in St. Louis. So how does that happen?
Right. Yeah, so my trajectory out there was to be a production assistant, production secretary, production coordinator, do that for a handful of years, and then hopefully 15, 20 years down the line, I'd get to produce a show like that. That was the path. And it was a good path, but I slowly started to feel like, as cool of as an experience as it was, I was definitely a cog in that wheel, in that machine. I didn't feel that sense of fulfillment and creativity that I had really had when I was here. I really, really missed it. On a personal note, I had a longtime boyfriend that was still here. My family was here. I knew I wanted to have kids and settle down one day, and that environment, that type of like work culture was not as conducive to that. So I knew at some point I was going to hit a crossroads of those two things. So around that same time, I was having all these questions in my head. Once films here in St. Louis had really taken off and had really expanded and exploded, and they were in need of a producer. And when I was there before, I was editing and shooting. So there was just a huge opportunity, and it really felt like the right time to come back. I make it sound easy, but it was a very difficult decision at the time because I had really just gotten myself established in LA. So I made the decision to come back. I've been at Once Films now for a total of 10 years. There was that gap when I was in LA that I would come back. They'd fly me back to edit occasionally, so I still count my 10 years. But I have not looked back. That was honestly the best decision I've ever made. We do corporate video, we do documentaries, we do stories for brands, and we get to tell real stories of really good people here in St. Louis doing good things every day.
So talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is a disconnect that some people don't see. And they come to film school, and I think, unfortunately, some people leave film school with the idea of a producer as being somebody who is responsible for making sure that you know what the budgets are. Talk about your role in the creative process, because I think that's one thing that I think happens a lot when people get to me. When I often used to teach the class production house. I don't teach production house anymore.
Oh, wow.
I know, weird, right? It was my class, I created it, so it's weird that I don't teach the client class anymore. But when people get to me in that class, I find that they think, when I say, okay, who wants to be a producer? Nobody wants to be a producer because they think of producer as the person who's just there to kind of be responsible for logistics. You know, they make the phone calls to get the location. And then they find out that working at this level, the producer is really the primary creative on everything. So tell them a little bit about what your job actually is.
Sure. It has changed a lot over the years, for sure. But for me, producing is really, I mean, if you're somebody that really loves seeing a project from A all the way to Z, that's essentially what it is. In my role, a client or a company will come to Once Films and they say, we need a video. And that's pretty much it. And my job is to, it's a discovery, it's that curiosity process. It's asking a lot of the right questions to find out, like, well, why do you need a video? And who will be watching this? And where is it playing? How long do you want it to be? Are these interviews? Is this scripted? Like, you're really helping them almost discover what they need. And then if they're just totally clueless, they have no idea what they need, it's learning about their company, learning about their brand to help advise them and give them examples of things that might work for them. And that's where that creativity comes in. And that's a lot of fun. And the other thing about that is I don't do that on an island. We have a really great team of people, creative directors, and we have our editors. We bring our camera people into that conversation too. And we have like brainstorm sessions, like what would be really cool? Like what would be really, really cool for them? And how will this help raise more money for them? That process is a blast. It's something I get to do almost every day. But on a more granular level, it's taking it from that front end, helping them discover what their film's going to be about. But then it is logistics too. It's executing those things. So location scouting, getting all the right people at the right place at the right time. But I'm highly involved in the edit process as well. While I don't sit at a computer every day anymore and do those things, I'm often in rooms with a handful of editors, and we're coming up with ideas like, wouldn't it would be better if we cut here? Or what if we added this? Or this music might really sell it. Like, it's getting to weigh in on all of those things as well. And for me, the most rewarding part, I actually was someone who was really afraid talking to people here. I would always be behind the camera. I would never be in front of the camera. And I would just do my job, and that was basically it. But now I absolutely love talking to our clients. I love being the point person. If they need anything, I'm the main person they reach out to at once. And getting to share that success with them when they get to play their video for the first time. Just delivering a product that they're extremely happy with and that's going to do a lot of good in the community is really my absolute favorite part. So it's definitely not about budgets. While that's part of it, that is a 10% part of it. It's all the fun of helping them figure out what they can do for that budget and how we can make the best thing possible.
So now you guys understand a little bit more about Whitney's trajectory and more importantly kind of what she does. What kind of questions might you have? We don't have a ton of time, but you have somebody in front of you who has come to school, who years ago came to school for reasons not unlike the ones that brought you here, and has found a trajectory through the Hollywood system and into a very different place. You might have a question or two. Yeah.
Would you recommend making that jump to Hollywood right after college?
Ooh, if it's in your mind and you kind of feel it in your gut, yes. I think that was my biggest thing. While I didn't end up there, I always knew I was going to have that what if, and I just wanted to try it. I just wanted to see it. I wanted to have nice weather for a little while. It was an incredible experience, and there's parts of it I do miss, but I think it's incredibly, incredibly valuable. And there are so many alumni out there that you would not be alone. You would be able to get your hands on something and try something.
But you
sure.
lived out there in an apartment, right? I mean, be prepared for shock, whatever you're paying in rent right now.
Oh my God, yeah. So definitely save up some acorns before you go out there. Because it took me, I was out there about 7 months until I got the 2.5 Men job. I was dabbling on little things here and there before that. But you definitely end up taking some gigs that are unpaid just so you can get around people. There was a gig I did that was a 20-hour workday, unpaid. I ended up just getting ice at the store and standing there until they needed me. And that girl that I worked with was in my wedding, ended up being best friends. So you never know. Yes.
Is there something you would have done differently in your time in LA?
My time in LA differently. I feel like everything I did there, while some of the gigs I had or experiences I had were not the greatest, I wouldn't change anything because I think I learned something from each of those experiences. I feel like doing a little bit of television, which is something, ironically, I thought I would never do. I did it here, but I was I don't really want to do that. That's where I ended up. I was better for it. I think it was better that I didn't do exactly what I thought. It exposed me to a whole lot of new things.
So would you say that there are less film opportunities in New York compared to LA?
I don't think that there are less. I think, honestly, there's a lot of filming going on in a lot of different places these days. Atlanta was really big, but that was after I had already moved. I was just attracted to LA because I really wanted to do Marvel and Disney, and I was attracted to that whole Burbank, Anaheim scene. And I had an aunt and uncle out there, and I knew I could crash, so that was part of the decision. But no, New York has plenty of opportunity too.
I think as a producer in today's climate time, or a person who's seen the evolution of what's going on in content, what would you say, instead of going out there trying to do that, what you may have done and what I may have done, go out there and solicit and try to find people, because now content is on the internet. Would it be better for Serve if you got your content, created something that was so worthy and they saw it on the internet versus trying to go in through the back door? Because what I ran into when I moved out there with my degrees, there were so many USC, UCLA, USF,
Yeah.
CDI students And remember, their alumni sitting right there. So how I beat that system was on weekends I would volunteer. And so now that came up on my resume immediately that I worked on an AFI project or a USC project, and I got the door because that other stuff didn't work. And now once I got that door, that person gave me that chance, and then they called me for all these other projects. But today's climate, everything's changed. That's harder to do. Wouldn't it be best, I'm saying, I think it's best to create something that's powerful enough that you get the invite from Hollywood from the top, that they saw your creative work and get hired that way versus trying to do your own business.
Possibly. I can't speak to that as much now because I was there at a time, honestly, guys, like smartphones were kind of new. So like I can't speak to that fully. So the back door, like being able to connect with alumni was like a good approach. But yes, I mean, it's good to make really strong work and put it out there. I just know, at least on the show that I was at, the people at the top, they didn't look at work. They didn't even look at people's resumes. They didn't care really where you went to college. They just wanted to know that you had worked on something in LA before. So getting those little gigs that you can get, like when you first land somewhere, just shows that you've worked in that city, and that's honestly the foot. And then just being a good person, having a good interview.
So you built Once Films when you got back to St. Louis?
So Once Films existed when I was here at Webster. I was a senior here. It was just starting out, and they needed someone to come out and help edit for 2 days a week because there was a photographer that started it, and they didn't really know how to edit. So I just got really lucky being in the right place at the right time, doing that on the side. And while it grew while I was in LA, they had gotten to the point where they needed someone to come and produce and keep them organized, to be honest. And so I moved back here to take that full-time producing position. And I really did like to edit, and I was a decent shooter, and I was a good editor when I left here. All of that technology has changed, and it continues to change. But what hasn't changed is, like I said, being a good person, being able to communicate with your classmates, being organized, that's huge, being organized. And just being personable, because those things transfer no matter what career path you decide to do. Skills can be taught. You guys will have a foundation after being here on the production, but that can be updated, that can be relearned. If I needed to go pick up a different camera tomorrow at once because someone was sick, they could show me in 10 minutes, I'd be fine. But what's not replaceable is just how you conduct yourself. And that's what people are gonna remember, and they'll take you from TV show to project to project. It's all about the connections.
We have about 2 minutes left. Any more questions? Yeah.
So I know now social media is such a big thing. Do you feel like you need to be a lot more careful with social media now? Like somebody, maybe an employee, will see something that you've done in the past?
Yes.
And just make sure that you don't put anything, I guess, controversial on there?
Yes. Employers will Facebook stalk you, even if they say they won't. They will. I have my personal strategy for that is that I keep Facebook strictly personal. It's just my friends and family, and then I keep my Instagram and my LinkedIn really professional. But yeah, anything that's potentially damning, I would take down when you're getting ready to go into the workplace.
Yeah, I was going to say, even though I'm your Facebook friend, you're not very controversial on Facebook either.
No, I don't talk politics. I don't talk religion. I occasionally post a picture of my kid, but I don't friend my clients will friend me on Facebook, and I don't friend them back. I just let Instagram and LinkedIn be that because I want Facebook to be kind of my personal space. But yeah, people will look. They will.
What else?
Do you have any internship opportunities right now?
We don't right now, but we do from time to time. There is a spot on the Once Films page where you can click and put in what you're interested in, and it'll catalog it in a database for us for whenever that time comes up again. But I should mention something really cool. We have, are you guys familiar with St. Louis Design Week? It happens every year. All the studios in town participate. Like Atomic Dust does, 90 Degrees West, Toki. We're having an open house as well, so it's kind of an open studio tour time where anybody can come by and just check out the space. It is next Thursday, the 14th? I think it's the 14th. The 14th from 4 to 6 p.m. So if you guys want to check out Once Films and talk more and you think of a question between now and then, I'll be there.
You should go on the website and check out their work. It's really unique for the kinds of things that they're doing. It's client work that is very much using the storytelling skills that you're learning now. It's not just commercial work. It's something special, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Whitney. Let's give Whitney a round of applause. We'll see you all next week.